You gotta be quiet. Shh, shh.
Tonight's topic is permafrost, everyone. I'm glad you joined in. Geologist Doc Larson here.
I was regaling them with my, I guess, geology. I don't know. And then I see that one, 3, 2, 1. I'm like, the movie's gonna start.
Well, I love the scheduling events because look, we just jumped in here. There's already 55 folks already.
Fantastic.
Waiting. Yeah. Well, I appreciate everybody tuning in. We don't have to wait because apparently there's plenty of people in here ready to rock and roll. So appreciate everybody jumping on the live stream tonight. This is kind of an ad hoc subject. We didn't have a topic to talk about, and we kind of kicked a few things around this morning, and we came up with some stuff. So our topic tonight first is going to be comparing surplus gear to modern new, made equipment. So we're going to talk about that, the pros and cons to, buying surplus as opposed to buying new made and vice versa. So we thought that'd be an interesting topic, and that could cover everything from, uniforms, headgear, armor, web equipment, boots, weapon accessories, you name it. There's all kinds of surplus shit on the market, and, and there's always a new made equivalent out there. So that's topic number one. Topic number two, sex robots. That seems to be a recurring theme. And we figure we would talk about sex robots for a while, particularly their application in the infantry squad level, because it's just the government's not going to fund one per, Marine or soldier. It's going to definitely be at minimum fire team. So that would be topic number two. Without further ado, guys, I'm going to go around the horn. I introduce everybody, and then we'll get this going. I am expecting the possibility of one more guy jumping in later on, and if he does end up coming on, I'll introduce him at that time. But going around the horn here, we got Pegasus Tests, aka Les. He's got his own YouTube channel called Pegasus Tests. Make sure you go over there and check him out. Les was a Marine in the early 90s, served in Desert Storm. He is a veteran of that war. He's a plethora of knowledge. He's a black hat instructor at the One Shepherd Leadership Institute. Always a pleasure of having him on. Welcome online tonight, Les.
Good to see you, man.
Moving on, we got Bruce at Camp Armament. No stranger to my YouTube channel. He's my right-hand man. Has filmed in many, many videos. You've seen him from World War II reenactments all the way up to Vietnam and so on and so forth. So he and I are got something in the works for a SOG video come spring, summer. We're looking forward to that. That's going to be a lot of fun. But Bruce has a plethora of knowledge. He kind of brings the civilian perspective to the chat. Well, I guess we got Abner here too. But Bruce definitely brings a civilian perspective to the chat. He is a armorer. He does a lot of Cerakote work, works on a lot of weapons. He's a former aircraft mechanic. He's been to a lot of tactical civilian-oriented schools. So, he's very tactically inclined for civilian. And, again, we're glad to have him on. He brings that perspective to us. Thanks for joining us tonight, Bruce.
Mm-hmm.
Next, we got the good doc, Dr. Christopher Larson. He's an accomplished author. He's written many books on small unit tactics. And he's the founder of the One Shepherd Leadership Institute. He's a veteran of the U.S. Army. He was an NCO. He served back in, the 80s. I'll let him disclose his age. But he's served in Korea. He's an MGM scout. And always a plethora of knowledge. And we're glad to have him on tonight. Thanks, Doc. Oh, and he also has his own YouTube channel, Christopher Larson. Make sure you check him out and subscribe. All right, last but not least, we got UT74, Uniform Tango 74. He's got his own YouTube channel. Also, what's your Instagram, Abner?
My Instagram is heroes_N as in November _villains _reimagined. That is my Instagram.
Well, anyways, this is Abner's second time on the channel. He was kind of a reoccurring guy back on my channel years ago, and then he went on a hiatus, but he's back. So I'm glad to have him. He also brings a civilian perspective. He's gone to a lot of shooting courses, shoots a lot. He used to be an AK aficionado, and then he kind of transitioned to ARs and still does AK stuff, but he diversified a little bit. So.
That's right.
But he definitely was, when I first met him, he was definitely, the big AK guy back then. So Nonetheless, glad to have you on, Abner. Appreciate you jumping on tonight, bud.
Thanks.
All right, so that is our panel, guys. And again, our topic number one is surplus gear versus new made stuff. What are the pros and cons, benefits of either buying either or? Obviously, I think there's enough to be said for both categories. So let's just kick this around, fellas. I've been bumping my gums for a while now, so I'm going to kick it over to one of you. Who wants to kick this off?
As usual, I'll go ahead and jump on the grenade.
There you go. You do that.
Well, I think really what it comes down to is two factors. One, what do you intend to do with the gear? And two, what does your wallet allow you to afford? One of the advantages of surplus is it can be gotten at a really good price a lot of times. Now, you'll go through a kind of a curve on the surplus where there'll be a certain type and it's everywhere and it's dirt freaking cheap. And then after a period of times, usually a decade or two, it'll all of a sudden get real expensive because there's just not as much of that type around. And you'll go through a period also where the surplus you get is high mileage, well used, and then you start getting all kinds of unissued stuff. So using surplus comes with the caveat that you accept what you get. And like my jokes, sometimes you don't get it. And you accept that, hey, I'm getting this at a really good price. And sometimes I'm getting really good stuff, but I'm also getting something that's designed to be somewhat disposable. If you go on the other side of high-end Gucci type gear, you pay a lot and you accept the fact that, yeah, I'm paying a lot for this gear and that replacement costs of it are going to be pretty high. But a lot of times, it's a personal choice really of what you prefer.
Yeah, so I'm long in the tooth here. And I can tell you that when I was a kid, Army brat, and jumping into one Shepherd, it's way back in the day, 1981. And for those of you that are really bad at math, that makes me 29. Anyway, but my point here is that I remember that back then, as late as the early 80s, you had two choices. Seriously. Think about what surplus gear means. It means it was made on contract for the government. Okay. So you were getting stuff that had been retired and used and abused, or as Les pointed out, you're getting what's called NOS, new old stock. Okay. But it was run on a contract. Nobody made this. The only people that made it, to my knowledge, back in, again, let's talk 81. The only people that were making anything that would compete with military surplus all came from Taiwan, and they were cheap knockoffs. They looked pretty good, but oh my God, they broke. They were terrible, right? They had found a niche market that, hey, I can get you close enough to military gear that it looks cool for a Halloween costume. And that was pretty much it. And so you saw that. But what happened, what evolves over the 80s and 90s is not truly what was once considered surplus, that is factory overruns, overstocks, or, end-of-life items from a government contract, but in fact deliberately made for the U.S. market and the U.S. consumer. And while, again, initially this was pretty cheap stuff, from Taiwan, this became better and better and better quality to the point now where in some cases, I certainly don't mean this across the board, I find that, but in some cases it's better made than the U.S. stuff, right? Let me say that differently. It's not better made necessarily that it lasts longer, but it's better made. Hey, look at me. There you go, Santiago. But it is better made it's better made that it meets your mission better. Okay. And let me give you an example of that. So the military had to adopt the civilian stuff. Guys going up Mount Everest were using a wide variety of stuff, including military gear. And in the 1970s, with Polar Fleece for NASA and all this other stuff, Gore-Tex came out. Okay. Gore-Tex came out and breathable microfibers. And sure enough, the United States Army decided, hey, we want that. And so in the 80s, this was ushered in, but they were buying stuff that was not, it performed better than the United States Army stuff, at least under certain, cold weather climates, but it wasn't robust enough. And so it started to, split off, and it became its own industry. And the military, as their understanding matured, said, look, we need your toughest, strongest stuff. And I've had mountain climbers, professional mountain climbers, point out that the Gore-Tex I used in the Army, they said, we would never pack with that because it's so heavy. It is so incredibly robust. As a mountain climber, I never need to get into the mud and the ice and crawl through concertina wire. It's just not going to happen. And so we can go, they have different levels of Gore-Tex in terms of capability. And so my point here is that you can see like an evolution. Does that make sense? So you can see like an evolution of, okay, this was military stuff. This was civilian stuff. And this is the civilian stuff trying to encroach in or being pulled into military. And now today we have everything under the sun, including Gucci surplus, which is not really surplus at all. It's tailor-made for us.
Yeah, I think one of the real turning points in the quality of gear came in the early 90s, right after Mike Knoll came out of his Desert Storm experience and formed Blackhawk, where he started making gear a whole lot better. And, he rightly anticipated there was a market for that. I bought my first piece of Blackhawk gear from Mike Knoll directly out of his garage in Virginia Beach in 1993 when the company started. And yet, look where he took it now. I mean, 3 decades later, it's been bought out by ATS, and it's become one of the brands that everything's measured against. And I think that's where you find the real turning point of when gear that wasn't military issue started to surpass military durability. And since that time, you have all these, about a zillion other companies now that are producing their own brands, and everybody's come up with their own ideas. And now you kind of see the military following what's premiering out there in the civilian market and then adopting the best things for their own.
Yeah, I just want to say, and Zane Fisher's in here. I served with him in OIF 1 and during the invasion, and even as early as early 2000s, 03 invasion, there wasn't civilian made gear really out there. Blackhawk was kind of a thing. There was a couple guys I remember that had some Blackhawk LBVs and stuff. But everybody used the issued shit because that's what was there. Civilian companies really just weren't making stuff back then. I mean, it's just from then to now, it's just crazy. I mean, you have those options.
That's interesting that you brought up Blackhawk, Les. We'll have to talk about that more. I purchased some of my first Blackhawk gear. I'm going to guess it was probably 95 or so. And I was running a Chinese AK and 5.56 at that time. And Blackhawk was one of the only companies out there that made pouches for those magazines. And it was essentially an Alice style M16 pouch, but it was taller and it would hold the AK magazines. And it was the only game in town. And that's what opened my eyes to aftermarket solutions for, I guess, military or paramilitary problems. And those worked out very well. And at that time, I'm telling you that Blackhawk had a different name in the industry. They were the leading aftermarket gear that was considered better quality than what the military had. And this was U.S. made stuff, if I'm not mistaken. They were still making everything in the U.S. Absolutely top quality stuff. And you paid for it, especially back then. It wasn't cheap. The military started picking up some of that, and Blackhawk grew. Eventually, you started seeing stuff made, I believe, in Vietnam, if I'm not mistaken, but somewhere in Southeast Asia. And that was then they just got big. They blew up and they became big. But there's a lot of other now aftermarket custom companies that followed in their footsteps. ATS is one. I think First Spear's one. There's so many. There's dozens that are all top quality stuff. Blue Force gear is one that I use constantly. I probably bought 30 Blue Force gear slings. Every time I put a modern rifle together, a Blue Force gear sling goes on there. So there's big support in the industry now that wasn't available 20 years ago at all. And the internet's a big reason that we have that now is you can just hop online and you can order something. That's also one of the reasons that surplus stores have sort of died. There's no money in it for them. I was on eBay today looking up Woodland camouflage BDUs. It wouldn't even be worth my time to try to sell one. A good condition Woodland BDU military surplus is like $17 shipped. It's not even worth my time to go to the post office for that. So some of that stuff is very inexpensive if you want to purchase it online. But how can an Army Navy store stay open selling, trying to compete with those prices? I don't know. But in terms of surplus versus new gear, I'm a big fan of both. I'll tell you, when you're out in the field, you've been out there for 3 days, style means absolutely nothing. That has gone into the trash. That's for both high-end modern weapons as well as high-end expensive gear. And sometimes those can even be a detriment. And I'll explain. How many times have we been online, and all of you guys, and you've seen the guy with the $3,000 Knights Armament AR-15, and he's got Velcro on the shell deflector, and he's wearing his gloves when he handles it. It's like, bro, what are you doing? Like that's like a show car. You're not gonna be comfortable taking that in the field and running it. If you won't take a can of spray paint to it right now, you're going down the wrong path. And we see tens of thousands of guys do that. It's the same thing with gear. If you're out there in a plate carrier that costs $450, are you ready to crawl around in it and tear it up and beat it up and treat it like an expendable piece of kit? If you are, great, by all means. If you've got that kind of money, go for it. But if not, some of these surplus options or even less expensive aftermarket options could be good options for you.
Hey, so that's an excellent point. And I literally have been training people who said, whoa, Doc, chill out. This is a $600, shirt and pants. It's $300 each. I'm not getting in the ground and crawling underneath that concertina. I'm not joking. I've had guys look me dead, and they weren't joking. And I was like, okay, you bought a $600 uniform. We're not talking parkas and boots here. That would be, already just like my mind's blown, right? But they exist, and I'm not saying they're not good. I'm just saying, the issue is these guys just had a wool shirt, a wool pair of pants, very specialized, brilliantly done, Gucci gear. It was just their shirt and their pants. It was a spring day. They're like, we're not crawling in a $600. I got suits that cost, business suits that cost hundreds of dollars less than what I'm wearing right here. And I'm like, geez, how do you argue against that? They just didn't want to get them dirty, let alone injure them. But that said, I got a question for Abner, because he's our AK guy. And before I go any farther, I got to do a timeout. Abner, I thought you were an Air Force veteran. And so when Brent said, yeah, Bruce is our token civilian in this group, except Abner, I was like, oh, man, that was such a shot at the Air Force. And then later he says, no, he's our AK guy. I was like, oh, totally. Okay, I get it.
So you saw the glasses and you automatically assumed.
Smart people all go to the Air Force. We know that. That's why they didn't let me in. They're like, dude, your GED, no, is not going to get you here. So anyway, but Abner, you're the AK guy. And so you remember this. I remember in the 90s, all you could get were like Chi-Com, cotton canvas webbing. And Jesus, I think we were paying $3.80 per webbing. So they were really affordable. But I did not start to see until Bruce said, Blackhawk started coming in with the webbing. What's your experience in that transition? And the reason I'm asking about this, Abner, is that's a unique perspective, because when we talk surplus, we naturally think of U.S. gear and U.S.-oriented weapon systems, communication systems, but you have a whole different perspective there. What was your experience?
Well, it was very limited. Like you said, back then it was just the Chi-Com rigs, and there was no one really offering anything new to accommodate that. And as you guys know, back in the 90s and 80s, everyone hated the AK. All the gunsmiths here in the US were like, get that commie crap out of here. So there was nothing out there. So myself, I got into the AKs in the early 2000s, the end of the 90s. And yeah, I was stuck with old stuff. Like you had to run with the Comblock pouches on your regular belt because that's how the Russians wore it. You know, they had their dress belt over their uniform, and you had to put a 3-cell or a 4-cell on your hip, and that's what it was. And then not until the early 2000s, I used to be on the Suarez Warrior Talk forums, and that's when, you know, Suarez was really pushing the AK. And then I think that's where everyone started, okay, well, he's talking about it, he's making it big. Everyone's on there. Mac was on there. I remember Mac was on there. A lot of YouTube guys were on there. And that's when the AK started picking up steam because he teamed up with Jim Fuller, right? And again, so the influence started there. And then that's where all your civilian companies started to say, oh, well, you know, there's all this just Chicom stuff. Let's make our own. Then you started seeing all these chest rigs come out with adjustable Velcro flaps to accommodate, you know, the 47 mags, the 74 mags, right? That's like, again, early to mid 2000s. And just to echo what you guys said, there's the civilian market created that competition, right? You said all that stuff from Taiwan, which was iffy, but then we noticed that the quality in the stitching and the building got better and better because of that, and because of the trend, the AK. I remember, again, back in Warrior Talk days, it was kind of like, it was just this small group of people that loved it, and then everyone was still hard on the AR, and, you know, and people were just like, oh, you guys are AK, you know, just a lot of clan warfare, basically. But then the just competition, and then the modernization of the AK. So we needed gear to accommodate the Kalashnikov, and that's where the civilian market, the private companies said, let's do it. And then that's where we saw the increase of all these modern chest rigs, you know, from the standard, you know, people now AK-74 pouches and AK-47 pouches. I'll run it. I don't have an issue. I'll throw it on my belt and I'll run it. But those are now like collector items. You know, people just put their mags in it and then they put it on display. They put it in a glass case. I know people who have glass cases with AK mags and in Russian pouches, and they're, oh, that's my display stuff, bro. And it's just like, wow, you know. Yeah. So that's what it's become.
I've got some slab side 1950s AK, you know, magazines. I rarely ever shoot them. I display those babies. But you know, and that's a funny thing. So like you've got the brand new Ratnik series, you know, and systems inside of the Russian army. But oh my God, I think that's more expensive than the Gucci gear. It's just because rarefied, right?
Yeah.
Am I correct? It's because it's so rare and hard to get in?
Yeah, I've bought stuff from Russia. Bruce has bought stuff from Russia, right? And it takes forever to get here. And that's the problem. And no one really wants to wait. You know, they want it. And I guess, and the Russians know, here's the thing. The Russians know that we like that stuff because they know the trend. They watch the stuff. They watch Brent's videos. They watch Bruce's videos. They watch mine every now and then. They follow the Americans on social media. And they just go like, oh, you know, the Americans like our stuff, man. Let's jack up the price. And they do it. And guess what? We pay. Now, the people who really go for broke when it comes to the gear from overseas are the airsofters, you know, the reenactors, and the guys who LARP really hard. And, you know, hey, I'll LARP. I LARP for the IG. I do. Okay. I do it. And so if you want that authenticity, how bad do you want it? So you're going to pay that Ratnik gear. I look at the plate carriers and I'm like, holy crap, this is more than Spartan armor. You know, I'm just like, what the heck? These Russians are ganking us. And, you know, the dollar, man, goes far in Russia, man. It goes far. So they know we'll pay for it for airsoft reasons and for social media. Absolutely.
Santiago's sitting there smiling. He's like hiding in the lower corner there because he's the bastard that's, you know, paying all that money and driving the costs up. That's what.
No, I'm not. A quick story. You mentioned mags earlier. Beginning of the year, I took a class and I ran my AK, and I had some Bakelite with me, and there was this one guy in that class. I swear he had a hard on for the Bakelites, and when he saw me dropping them and chucking them, he was losing his shit. He comes up to me at lunchtime and goes, "Hey man, like, you know those are Bakelite, right? I go, yeah, I heard about that. Just playing dumb. And he goes, like, those are very rare. Like, you shouldn't be treating them the way you're treating them. I go, dude, they're fucking mag, man. If you want to buy them after class, I'll sell them to you. Let me finish beating them up during the class. The guy was fucking, he was annoyed for the rest of the afternoon. He was pissed. It was fun. It was a giggle. Quick thing. I mean, a lot of what you guys said is true. I agree with a lot of it. The funny thing that I experienced with the little bit of spec surplus gear that I've been using, that I've purchased, any one of us, a lot of guys that are in the game, that are training, that are buying gear, I mean, it's all fucking toys for us. So price, most of the time, is really not an issue, because if you want it, you're gonna fucking buy it anyway. I mean, we're buying thousands of dollars in ammo. We're saving money for guns. I mean, when jokes have always made, hey, sell one of your 1911s and you can get full fucking night vision kit. And it's true. If you want it, you're gonna get it. I mean, I've used that one Shepherd, the Alice pack. The not the Alice rig, but the Alice pack. It's worked great. The sleep system I got surplus. I used that. We camped in it. My wife and I were in 26-degree weather. Now, I've never gotten used to like the latest and greatest shit. So if I try something new, I'm sure it's gonna be better, more comfortable, probably more convenient and user friendly. But I mean, for me, my limited experience starting out with the older shit, it's fine with me. I mean, I know there's better stuff, but if you're not spoiled by the new stuff, using surplus gear is it's no big deal, man. I know. I mean, that Alice truck I have has taken the beating over at One Shepherd, the hikes that I've been on. I mean, I beat the shit out of that stuff. And I'm here in South Florida where we'll go out on a hike, and when it rains here, it's a monsoon. Like, we'll get 3-4 inches in a matter of an hour. And we're walking through swamps, and it gets beaten. It gets beaten, and it lasts, And I mean, I've been out there with surplus and Gucci gear, and I beat it all to hell the same. It doesn't matter. If it's quality gear, it'll last. And if it doesn't, then you know what? You're gonna buy a new one. So yeah, the dollar counts sometimes, but if you want it, you're gonna buy it.
Yeah, good point. And another thing is, does the gear work? If what you're using and you start out with surplus and it gets the job done, you're probably not going to go searching for Gucci gear. But when your surplus stuff isn't getting the job done, that's when you're going to start saying, hey, I need something better, and you're willing to pay for it.
Yeah. No doubt. I see a lot of guys using the latest and greatest stuff, and I'm sure it's comfortable. It's probably more easily accessible in certain things, in certain applications. But I mean, the way you said it, if it's working fine, it's broken, don't fix it.
Exactly. And I think One Shepherd gives a good example of that. When we go out in the FTX, you have old guys like me who's using the same rig they've used since the 90s because it works. But I've noticed that a lot of guys will come out with the super Gucci stuff, and then 3-4 semesters in, and all of a sudden they start looking pretty retro. Because the older surplus store stuff is epitomized for patrolling and being in the woods.
Well, okay, so let me speak to that, because that's true. Let me be very clear. I'm not saying Molly versus Alice, right? Let's stick to U.S. gear for just a minute. I'm not saying Molly is less valuable, less useful, less robust, or anything like that. Like, there's a comparison constantly, 20 years ago, there was a comparison between Alice and Molly. And Molly won out in the United States military. But you have to understand, it's because, look, I was mech infantry and I was light infantry. And I'm telling you, getting out of a track, right, an armored vehicle, with a whole squad of guys, while you have gear that's built around your center, right? It's all over, it's right through here. It's doing this. And there's a reason, because when you're on your knees, on the prone, fighting behind the tree, shooting to the next berm in a patrolling, woodland, non-urban environment, You want your real estate right around you. You want it to be at your hands. When you're getting in and out of vehicles, that just doesn't work. Okay, let's just be honest, guys. You need it right here. This is your real estate. This is prime real estate right here. Because I'm getting out of a vehicle, I'm going through a doorway that we kicked open, I'm running down a hallway, and I'm shooting up stairways. My God, I need this stuff right here. And that's what happened, was that Molly put it on our chest, on our body armor, which Alice body armor was an afterthought. It put it all right up here on our body armor so that we could get through the door and fight a very, forward directional fight. You get out in the woods, you get out, in the mountains and stuff, and you're fighting a 360-degree fight. And, and this is prime real estate when you're laying down in the prone to defend yourself, and you're sticking up, you feel like a turtle trying to hump another turtle. Oh, is this a family show? I'm sorry about that, Brent. Anyway, that's what it feels like. You're like, this is tortoise sex is what it feels like. And so, you got to get that stuff off your chest and off to the side. And so there's the difference. What I'm trying to say is one isn't better than the other. One was clearly designed for mechanized forces in an urban fight and brilliantly designed for that. And the other one, Alice, was designed for a woodland, foot patrols and, very much a woodland mountainous, non-urban fight. And so that, I keep coming back to that. I think that's why a lot of guys come with Gucci gear to one Shepherd, and 3 semesters later, you see them over there carrying Alice that they bought $58 for the entire set, right?
Yeah, typically when it comes to that point, Doc, and I'm glad you brought it up. Like for me, I will run almost a hybrid of both. My chest rigs are typically split front, so that I can carry my gear up front. If I'm in a mechanized situation, like you said, no reason not to have it up front. Matter of fact, that's the ideal place to have it. If you're upright in any kind of way, having it up front where you can get to it fast, absolutely. The only downside is when you're crawling through a trench or you're crawling through brush for 100 yards or whatever it may be, and you're just filling your mags and full of mud, and you're wondering what you lost when you come out of that. Having a split front that you can open up and lay prone, super nice. And you may be laying in a spot for hours. Someone may say, hey, just set up a defensive perimeter right here and we'll get back with you. That happens all the time. How long are you going to be in that defensive perimeter where you're up high centered on that gear? It's completely uncomfortable and you're more exposed. You certainly feel more exposed than you should be. So having a split front that you can open up and lay down on, yet you still haven't cause that gear to fail. If you need to get up and run, I can get up and run with it left open. It's not going anywhere. It'll flop around a little bit, but that's fine. That's a huge benefit. So something I think for guys to think about when I do see guys with a lot of stuff stacked out front, 3 mags deep, right on the bottom of their rib cage. Have you went prone on that? And have you went prone in that on concrete for very long? Because probably not, because it's flat out uncomfortable and it creates a silhouette that you don't need. And I guess the other thing that I'll say is in terms of Alice packs, I know they've been brought up a whole lot. I'm a big fan of the Alice pack. I think that, you had gear development basically at Korea that during Vietnam changed. During Vietnam, in the beginning of Vietnam, we were still primarily cotton canvas material. By the end of Vietnam, we're starting to see a move to nylon. And that move to nylon, Vietnam was a big experimentation when it came to gear. We found out what worked, what didn't. But what came out of that was the sort of next generation of gear, which was ballistic nylon, super lightweight, did not hold water, doesn't really rot, but good quality, good durability. And I don't think it's advanced a lot since then. As a matter of fact, in some ways, it may have taken steps back. One of the things I love about an Alice pack is that you get a metal frame and it's very hard to damage them, and they can be repaired if you do. On some of the more modern stuff, I see a lot of stuff come out, these plastic frames, and I'm always seeing broken plastic frames. And I imagine that they get cold and someone sits on them and or steps on them, and it snaps. The combination of the two. I don't know, but I just find an Alice pack very comfortable, and you can pick up an Alice pack. If you shop smart, guys, you can pick up an Alice pack for 60, 70 bucks with frame, and you're set. Why would you need to spend anything else? To me, that's almost the ultimate pack. Maybe I'll change my mind one day if something truly better comes out, but I haven't seen that. I'm going to say one more thing while it's on my mind, because you guys know I like to rant. But in terms of crawling around in your gear, open top mag pouches, those are kind of a no-go. I will run a open top mag pouch for a fast reload, but I also know that magazine may not be with me when I need it. If I've crawled through a trench somewhere for that 100 yards, that magazine is at least going to be full of mud if it's still there. It's just too easy with your body weight on something, even with what people say is good retention, for it to get pulled out. Closed top mag pouches, they add 0.2 of a second probably to your times on a split range, but that doesn't matter if you've got a magazine that's fairly clean and will function every time that you go for it. And that's one of the reasons that when I look at guys that have kit, and I'm very judgmental when I see, I suppose, new guys in the field, whether they're at One Shepherd or whatever. I think we can all do this on whatever range. You can look at that guy's kit and you can tell right away, does he have a lot of experience carrying his gear? Or did he just go buy all the cool stuff that ARFCOM told him to buy and show up at the range? You can tell how that gear's set up.
2 semesters ago, I remember when our rush were being chucked into the deuce and off to deuce. I remember seeing some dude's face kind of just cringe when they got to his ruck, because he had a nice ruck, and I mean, when those are being loaded into the deuce and off the deuce, nobody's careful with them, because time's of the essence. We got to go. Nobody cares how pretty your ruck is. It's getting tossed in and tossed out like garbage.
Hey, I want to jump in here. I just want to go back to like the Alice conversation. So when I go to One Shepherd and stuff, I mean, I look like Chris's era. Like, I probably give him flashbacks because it's a conglomeration of stuff, but I wear Alice. Matter of fact, I'm packing my gear for Winter Forge next month, and I'm wearing an Alice belt. What Chris said was absolutely 100% true. Absolutely spot on, Chris. I'm glad you brought up that point. Like, all that Molly stuff is great for getting into out of vehicles, urban combat and stuff like that. But once you get into the woodland environment and you're out in the patrolling and open air and stuff like that, I mean, It's absolutely, and you see that nowadays with, circling back. A lot of the gear that's coming out now, guys are going back to like battle belts and stuff. And it just looks like an updated Alice equipment. And, one thing I'm very curious about, because look, we're talking about Alice here. Alice is from the freaking late 70s, 80s, and early 90s. And that stuff is still very viable and practical. It still works. Like, is this new shit that's getting made? Are we going to see that 20, 30 years from now still working? Like, Alice packs. I mean, come on. How long have those been around? And they're still freaking functional. Guys,
they've taken the beat all those years.
Yes, guys, even today are taking out in the Marine Corps are taking Alice frames and sticking them in the current issued pack, because we have a polymer frame. Now, I'm not gonna say that all the polymer frames are shit. Now, the Molly 2 polymer frame that I went to Iraq with, garbage. I think we've come a little bit farther than that time, because I think the frames are a lot stronger than they used to be. I've seen guys like literally bend them and not break, but definitely the old ones were garbage. But there's something to be said about that aluminum Alice pack frame. We sat on that thing all the time. It was a field expedient stool. Like, there was no need to, guys that go into the field carrying these little tripod stools and stuff, which, they do come in handy from time to time. But we used to sit on those Alice pack frames all the time. They're great, So anyways, that's one thing I do want to say, Bruce, because you guys were talking about ordering stuff from Russia. You have to tell your story about your argument with the postal person saying that Putin got your stuff here, but Obama couldn't. Go ahead, please tell that story.
Yeah, I ordered a lot of stuff out of Russia too, and and those guys are fantastically creative at getting stuff here. I would get boxes of AK parts and AK mags with all kinds of machine tools in them from the Cold War, and big blocks of like Bakelite, and just so that if it got x-rayed, you don't have a fucking clue what's in this thing, right? It's just this giant box out of Russia. And I'm digging through all of these drill bits and all this stuff anyway. And so I had a guy that I was buying gear from. And he had sent me a few things, and he was a good guy. And you could tell he didn't speak English. And obviously I didn't speak Russian. We're Google translating back and forth. But I will say this, all my experiences with the Russians, they have been straight up dudes. They have shipped me my stuff. And even if it didn't make it to me, they've reshipped me my stuff. I'll say that about them. I will say that about them. They've taken care of me. That's been my personal experience. But I just ordered I think it was just a sling. It was just like, or was it a belt? It was something minor. Anyway, what it was, a sling or a belt out of Russia that I wanted. And they send you this like international tracking where you can track this thing, right? And I see it going, it's on the tour around Russia. It's going to all the countries. You guys know this. You're on the global map. You're like, where is Savesk? Where is this place? And you're zooming in on it, and there's like a horse with a carriage behind it and this thatched hut. And you're like, what is it doing there? Anyway, it's making its way around. So finally it gets all the way here to Carrollton, Texas at my postal office, right? And my postal office is your very typical urban government worker postal office. So I go in there and I'm like, guys, where's my stuff at? We can't put our hands on. I'm like, no. Look at my tracking list. This is I can't even get it in the camera. It was pages long. And I'm like, this is my tracking list. I'm like, it went all over the world. It's been traveling for weeks. It's here. It got here. Someone here took this, right? Someone here put their hands on it and logged it in. Where is it? We don't know. We can't find it. And then here's what they say. They say, you can't file a claim that it didn't show up, even though you paid for insurance. The sender has to file a claim for it in BFE, Russia, in some village somewhere. And I went off and I said, you know what? And I'll let you guys guess the culture of this person. I said, you know what? This was during the Obama days too. I said, Vladimir Putin was able to get my package here from Russia. And under Obama, you can't find the package that's sitting here in this post office that you know is here. I was fuming. And it was probably a $25 deal, right? It's not the point. It's just the point that, it's like, goes back to what we said in the last stream. You got leaders that you can respect and appreciate that will get stuff done, and they ride around on bears with no saddle and no shirt and the frozen eyes. And you got guys that are on the lawn of the White House on a bicycle with a friggin' helmet on.
Snow belt?
The dude just sent me another one.
That's it. We got to get Bruce on the panel in the next presidential debate. That'd be awesome.
I love that story. I've remembered it all these years, man. It's been the funniest thing ever.
I don't know if y'all ever saw, it's a little off topic, but there's this, I wish I could tell you, there's this guy on the internet. There was a British skit, and it's hard to find because they've kind of banned it. It's kind of been shadow banned, but there was a show where this guy was from Germany, right? And he's in England, he's waiting on the train, and the Brits are around him, they're waiting on the train, and he's apologizing for World War II, right? Like, it's modern times, but he's like, hey, real sorry about that World War II thing, I can't believe it. And then it turns into he's starting to spaz out. He's looking at the clock, and the freaking train is late, right? It's like a minute late. He's like, what's happening here? And he kind of turns into Hitler, right? And he's like, the trains would run on time in Germany. And he has this absolute, dude, just get me my mail, man. I just want my mail.
What else
All
we got
right.
about here? I actually let me make this point. So let me just say, like, a lot of the new made stuff is obviously very well made. You know, you got your lower end stuff for, you know, airsoft like Condor and stuff, which, you know, I will say I took some Condor mag pouch to Afghanistan and they went all the way through. No issues there. So anyways, there's that. But there's a lot of high quality new made gear. But I think it's a fallacy. You'll commonly hear that U.S. military gear is made by the lowest bidder and all this stuff, and it's not quality stuff. I would disagree with that. Yes, there's examples of some gear that, you know, didn't cut the mustard, the Molly 2 pack frame, for instance. But for the most part, U.S. military gear, I believe, is quality stuff. And I want to say that, like, just using this as an example, you know, buying gear for the Winter Forge training, when I had to go, and Bruce, I'm sure you had examples of this too. You know, I didn't own a lot of extreme cold weather stuff. We don't get down into the, you know, into the sub-Arctic temperatures here in North Texas. But buying some of this cold weather stuff, it was very plentiful on eBay. You know, getting cold weather boots. I spent like $20 getting these, you know, U.S. military issue cold weather boots. They have the boot liners and everything. And that went for a whole bunch of other stuff. Waffle tops, all this cold weather gear that guys aren't buying because your average person is too lazy to go train in the extreme cold weather. And I got it super cheap. Now, comparing the prices that I bought this stuff, and it was all quality stuff when I got it, I was just like, man, this is legit. Comparing it to the civilian equivalent, the price difference is just vast, right? And this military gear was a fraction of the cost, and it's just, in my opinion, was just as well made as that civilian stuff that, you know, you're talking like mittens and stuff would probably cost $100+ civilian equivalent, and you're getting them for like $15. So it was very amazing, the cost savings in terms of that.
No, agreed. And so there's so many variables here when it comes to surplus, and I'm using the broader term surplus here. As you said, there's new old stock, there's beat up used stock, and then there's all the, frankly, they are commercial surplus competition, and that, and the commercial side of it will run from what I call, I know Taiwanese stuff is so much better made today. I'm using 40-year-old reference, but you know, the really El Cheapo knockoff stuff. Abner, you actually turned sideways just then. It was like your face distorted in a time vortex continuum. Anyway, you okay, dude?
Yeah.
Okay, because like you really had a stroke on us there. Anyhow, so even on the new side, like the Gucci commercial side, right? Well, I say Gucci, that implies the high end. There's a low end and a mid end. You know what? We can talk till we're blue in the face. How about I give you an anecdote? Recently, at One Shepherd, we've had for a decade now. We're 40 years old. And for 1 decade, a quarter of that time, we've carried the Prick 77 and the PRC 126 radios. Okay, so for those who don't know, the PRC 77 is the man pack, literally from the Vietnam era. And and it's a man pack. Damn things, I don't know, when it's all, the whole entire thing put together is about 14 pounds or 12 pounds or something like this. And then in the 70s and 80s, post-Vietnam, ushered in the squad radios, which is the PRC 126, 128 series. And they're just a couple of pounds, and they will fit on your battle belt, and same hand mics, different antenna and all this stuff. So this is what One Shepherd has used. They were available in the 90s and very, very affordable because we were phasing them out. There's a lesson to be learned there. We could have gotten them so dirt cheap. Why didn't we do that in One Shepherd? They didn't have battery conversions yet. Well, fast forward another 10 to 15 years, and all these other companies were coming out with battery conversions. You didn't have to buy the proprietary, super expensive lithium or magnesium batteries. You could actually buy your, either alkaline converters like D-cell, A-cell converters, or a common rechargeables. And so Point is, we got into it 10 years ago. And you have to understand that 10 years ago, we were buying anywhere from 20 to 40-year-old radios. These are military radios, okay? And they are military standard. So they were water submersible. They were drop proof, impact proof, dust proof. And we had been using all sorts of civilian variants for 30 long years with failure rates that were astronomical. Notice I didn't say performance problems. They performed perfectly fine. In some cases, they performed slightly better than the military radios in very, very certain metrics, narrow metric bands. But nonetheless, they had no durability. We would take them out and get them rained on. We'd do a river crossing. They were gone. You'd fall on them in IMTs, infantry, individual movement techniques. Bam, you'd look over there. Antenna just ripped out the housing. You'd have a hand mic on and you'd be in a battle and you'd turn away from your RTO and you just ripped a hole right through that radio. Like the hand mic comes out, one thing after another, these things just failed. They might last, a semester with us is 7 days. They might last 1, 2, or 3 semesters, done. If you got to 6 semesters with some of these radios, people were like, retire it, let's give it a pension. Let's put it up on a pedestal. And my God, this lasts us 3 years. Whereas the military stuff, 10 years later, we've only taken 25% losses. And they're 50 years old. They're 50 years old. And we're only taking 25% losses. So you say, wow, definitely buy surplus military. And in time, there is a time and place for that, guys. I guess this is what I'm saying. Look at those radios. Now, right now, we're faced with, okay, they're 50 years old. This is a sad tribute to them. The people that know how to maintain them, our depot level maintenance, these guys are literally dying. They're that old. They're 70 and 80-year-old men, and they're dying. And the parts aren't made anymore. So One Shepherd now has to move and migrate to another generation of radios, non-encrypted, because the government doesn't love us that much. And so you're looking at all of this, and we are going Woosung and Baofangs. We're looking at Motorola's. We're looking at Uniden and, you name it, Midlands. We're looking at brand new, believe it or not, you can still buy brand new radios from the military manufacturers, just non-encrypted. Okay. So I can go pick up like a MERS radio for $30, brand new, or I can go get a fully, we expect this radio to last 50 years and they are $3,000 to $5,000 each, right? Or you go, no, let's just continue buying the surplus ones at $500 to $1,000 each. I'm not trying to give you an answer. What I'm trying to show you is if you just look at radios alone, it's a pretty good microcosm of the span of surplus. Guys, we can go get brand new stuff made by civilians. We can go get brand new stuff made by the contractors under contract and get the military stuff. I can spend $30. I can spend $3,000. I can get used stuff. Which generation do you want? And you really start to see the myriad of choices open to you. So here's the great news to that. What's your mission? Why do you want? I think it was, Les, Pegasus Test, started by saying, what's your mission? What do you want out of this gear? What are you using it for? Because this is the really good news for you. There is no silver bullet, guys. Divest yourself of the notion that there's a perfect solution. There isn't. Doesn't exist. But the good news about this is you can find very specific mission criteria and then go find surplus for that. And you'll pay almost free to, your kids aren't going to college. That kind of levels, but you can find a solution.
You killed it, Doc.
Well, it's hard to argue with what he's saying and stuff. If your gear's configured to a certain mission, you'll go get what you need, and for like one Shepherd type stuff, my rig I use looks like I drag it through a 1990s Blackhawk catalog. But the fact is, it's epitomized for what we're doing out there at One Shepherd. It works great, and I haven't seen anything that's made me think I want to replace it because it's all totally functional.
Yeah, one comment here says, being a civilian, we can tailor our kid accordingly. Yeah, that's a great point, right? Like it's not a negative. A lot of the a theme I've seen in a lot of these streams is the pros of not being in the big government military anymore. You're not given the same piece of kit that every guy beside you is given and told, make it work, regardless of whether it's the best piece of kit or not. You can actually go out on your own and choose your individual pieces of kit and cater those to your needs. Now, the downside is you have to pay for that, right? You have to reach into your pocket and you have to pay for that, but you can do it. And so depending on your financial, your expendable finances, maybe you can do that, and maybe it's a little bit tougher, but that sort of ties in with the idea of surplus versus buying new. A lot of surplus stuff you can get that's good quality, that's very inexpensive for what it is, particularly if you're thrifty and you shop smart and you get out there and look for stuff people are getting rid of, and maybe they don't know exactly what they have, or maybe something like we'll just say a rucksack. Who wants to ship that? It's going to cost you $40 to ship it, and it's a pain in the butt. Go find somebody local that's got it in their garage, and it's going to be $40 less because they're not shipping it. You have to do the legwork. Yeah, you have to go meet up with them and pick it up. But there you go. You've got a great deal on a good piece of kit. There are Foot Lockers, thousands and thousands of Foot Lockers full of this stuff that someone's just got sitting in their garage or their attic that they're going to get rid of. It doesn't do that. I haven't touched it in 20 years. And some of it's really good stuff. And I've bought Foot Lockers of military surplus before, sight unseen, just knowing it was full of gear. And maybe you spend $50 on a Foot Locker. Well, one, I got a $200 plastic hardy case out of the deal that you guys that know me see me use a lot whenever I travel. And it was full of gear. And some of the stuff was absolutely worthless, like what are those reflective belts that the Army uses. But some of the stuff was absolute good.
Hey, go easy on the belt of invincibility. Nothing can harm you with the glow belt in your possession.
That's a military thing, and I have yet to deploy one. But yeah, I'm sorry about bad mouthing your gear there, guys. But take this surplus gear, especially if you're on a budget. Don't make the mistake of getting sucked into the idea that you're on the internet, you're on the different forums, and you think that you need Cry, or you think that you need whatever the most expensive stuff is that's out there, or you're going to be somewhat ineffective or at a disadvantage. That's not true at all. That's not true at all. A pair of Cry pants goes on one leg at a time, just like an old pair of BDU pants. There's really nothing that Cry has to offer in pants that's going to make you in any way better at soldiering or increase your odds at being able to win in a gunfight. It's just not that important. So don't think for a second that you need all this top of the line gear in order to go out and train. If you can afford it, great. I would recommend that you don't buy it at first. You're probably far better off spending that money on training or spending that money on ammunition than you are saving up to try to buy that $300 camouflage shirt that you're going to feel bad about getting torn and dirty the first time you do go out and train.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and to back up onto that, Bruce, money spent on training is always better than money spent on gear. If you can get by with surplus gear that'll perform the function, you'll get more out of the training. Now, before I appear completely hypocritical with being a guy who has enough gear from Blackhawk 1990s and pretty much everything from Varostalaika from the last 2 years, a lot of gear, when you find out how things work, when you go for the high-end stuff, what you're doing is you're tailoring to what you want it to do. Yeah. Like I found from a lot of experiences in Finland recently in the cold, their cold weather gear is way better than ours. And if you think about it, that makes perfect freaking sense. They fight in the cold all the time. So yes, I'll take my expensive Finnish Varostalaika cold weather gear over my U.S. government Equix every time. Equix works, Finnish gear works better, but you got to pay for that privilege. You know what? But I'll tell you straight up, if all you got is Equix, it's going to get you through.
As long as you know how to use it. Hey, let me jump in there, and I do agree. I mean, this gets back to the axiom: no, you don't need a $2,000 rifle. You need a $500 rifle and $1,500 worth of training.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of the same way with gear. Rifle is just one. We're talking about comms and night vision and rucksacks and battle rattle and even uniforms, right? And so rifles are just one more extension of that gear. So I absolutely agree with what's being said here. I do want to comment on one of the Andrew. You're over here in the comments, and you've asked, is it worth getting a DMRO? For those who don't know, and I think it's now called something else, but it's DSA or whatever it is, but DLA, Defense Logistical Agency. The DMRO project is when equipment has hit its use life in the military. They then turn and they sell it through certified, contracted distributors, and they do that in auction. So go to governmentliquidation.com or ironplanet.com or government planet, GovPlanet, I think is what it is, .com, and you can get an account there. You won't get a true DRMO account, and here's why. You have to be a government affiliation to do that, okay? So if you're a state gov agent, you can get one. If you are, say, a university level ROTC, and you represent them officially, then you can get one. But what you can get, the next greatest thing, is you can just, as any civilian, can go and get from like GovPlanet, ironplanet.com. You can go get a free account and you can make bids on those auctions. Now, let me caution you here, because I have one of those accounts and I've used it. I've used it for One Shepherd. The problem with them, I'm not saying don't do it. Hear me carefully, because it's really cool. The problem with them is this, and you're saying, well, it's still an auction, right? So you're competing against whatever the popularity of that item, but you're also not buying, 2 canteens, water canteens. You're not buying 2 or 10. You're buying 140, 580 canteens, right? So this is the problem, that you're going 580. I'm going to get them at I'm going to get them, at 50 cents each. Once I'm done with all the fees and the shipping and all this other stuff, they may be at 50 cents each or $1 each. But then you're like, how do I recover? What group do I belong to that I need 580 1-quart canteens? And it doesn't matter whether you're looking at trigger mittens or bayonets or, winter boots. This is my problem with it, is that I just couldn't make it work. And I work for, I'm with One Shepherd, for crying out loud. And I couldn't make those numbers work. So that's a bit of the issue. But you're asking, is it worth doing? Yeah, sure. Particularly if you represent a larger organization. Absolutely, I recommend it.
I'm gonna say I remember a comment earlier when we first started this stream. Somebody said I think a Survivor Metal Man, which he's got a YouTube channel, by the way, if you guys haven't seen him. But he made a comment about surplus stuff isn't cheap anymore, and that's kind of true in some regards on certain things. But there is a lot of surplus out there that's still very, very affordable. And Cole Salmons, who is the head guy of SNS, he actually did a video recently, because he's the one that's putting on Winter Forge, and he's trying to give guys advice on like getting the right stuff and what's cheap and whatnot. And he's showing guys like, hey, buy the UCP Gore-Tex top and bottom because it's super cheap. Nobody wants UCP because it sucks, right? Camouflage pattern wise. But he's like, buy the gear, it's quality gear, and then just dye it. You can dye it with this chocolate brown color, and then look. He just put out a video on his camouflage effectiveness of, him out in the winter forest, blending in really pretty dang good with this dyed brown UCP Gore-Tex top and bottom. And he's like, nobody wants UCP. Buy it up, get it while you can. So there's definitely deals out there on some of the stuff. But I don't want to undercut, some of the new made civilian stuff, right? Because I'll use an example here. I love Alice packs to death. We've already touched on Alice packs. They're great. They're getting up there in age and they're still working. They're still out there. The price has gone up drastically over the years. As recently as maybe 5 or 6 years ago, you could still get Alice packs for a drop dead steal. But now, they're getting up there. If you want a complete full Alice pack, for the most part, if you look on eBay, you're going to be paying almost going towards $100. So, you're getting to that point where it's becoming vintage and collectible and stuff, and, it's dried up. So maybe Alice isn't the way to go anymore. I don't know. You might still be able to find a deal out there from time to time, but there's, very, very good civilian packs out there. Crossfire, for instance, just throwing that out there. It's a very, very good pack. But, when you compare that in price with an old Alice pack, what are you looking for? I think the Crossfire packs are phenomenal. I take that to One Shepherd now. That's what I use now. I still love an Alice pack. An Alice pack will absolutely do what I need to do at One Shepherd, no question. But Crossfire pack it's nice. It's an updated pack, but you're going to pay for it. So it's just where you sit. Richard Santiago was just in here. He was talking about, hey, if you really want the thing, you're going to pay that extra money to get it. Mm-hmm. I do want to kind of start winding down on this, guys. We still got sex robots to talk about. So let's go around. Let's go clockwise, starting with Pegasus test, and just final thoughts on this whole, surplus to new made conversation. And then before we segue into sex robots, go ahead, Les.
Well, I would like to tackle a comment that came up in the stream here a little earlier where a guy was talking about there's a lot of good foreign gear. And I will say yes and no. When it comes to foreign gear, the surplus stuff, no, I'm not going to say it's good. And the point I'll use to illustrate that is look at pictures of soldiers training. You never see a U.S. soldier wearing another country's gear. You will, however, see other country soldiers using U.S. gear mixed in with their own. It's not uncommon at all to see British soldiers with lots of U.S. pouches and webbing gear on. Same with the Germans, same with the Norwegians. They'll be using our gear, but we won't be using theirs. So as far as government issue surplus goes, I think ours is way better, light years better. Now on the civilian side, it's a more level playing field. You got companies like Helicon Tex and Vostaleka putting out exceptionally good quality gear. And if you're willing to pay for it, it's definitely going to give you the quality you're looking for.
Guys, I can't disagree with anything any of the other men have said here tonight. I'm on the same page with them as I usually am. I'll just leave you with this bit of advice. Maybe this is a good rule to maybe remember. If you're spending so much on your gear or your weapon, equipment, whatever it may be, that you wouldn't be comfortable taking it out and really working it hard and possibly putting some wear on it, getting it dirty, getting it scratched up, getting it beat up, then look elsewhere. Don't spend your money on something that you're not going to go out and feel comfortable training hard with. You need to be able to just throw your body against the ground, drag it around, your weapon, everything that's attached to it. And you need to be focused on your training, the experience that you're getting, and the real reason that you're there, not showing off your gear. I said this in the beginning of the stream, that all the real cool stuff, the Gucci stuff, the stuff that you want to show off, the fashion show, that really goes out the window about the second day that you're out in the cold and you're wet with a bunch of other guys. None of that matters, and nobody out there, nobody will be impressed with it. They're going to be impressed with your personal performance and what you can bring to the team or what you can do for yourself, not what kit you're wearing. So just keep that in mind when you go to purchase something. If you're saving up for something, whether it's a firearm or gear, ask yourself, is this something I'm going to really be able to get out and train hard with, or would I feel bad about dragging it through the mud, the dirt, and the stones?
Okay, again, I'll repeat myself because it bears repeating. You don't need a $2,000 X. You need a $500 X and $1,500 worth of training. Here's what I would recommend. I think this is a pretty good rule of thumb, or at least it's been successful for me in several different organizations. And that is simply this. Get the cheapest thing you can get your hands on. Get your team together, yes, your team, get your team together, and go do training. I don't care if it's on your uncle's farm. Go do training together. Your El Cheapo gear will fail you. Take very, very careful note about how it fails you and what you want gear to do for you. Then come together as a team and decide, all right, if you're this position, let's say an RTO, we expect you to have this kind of gear. If you're this position, let's say an automatic gunner, support gunner, we expect you to have this. And if you're a rifleman, we expect you to have this. This is the way you find. It's trial and error. Use the cheap shit. It will inform you of the mid-grade to very expensive grade stuff that you want, right? And from that point, you move forward. Field gear is this weird balance, and military surplus, for that matter, is this weird balance for your needs of deciding, what's the minimum that makes muster, right? It is this weird balance of, we need uniformity, but I don't need you all the same. I need you mission specific. You're a medic. You're a radio operator. You're an assault gunner. You're a rifleman. I need you to have specific to that position, and that's uniform, but I also need differentiation. And so the way you discover that is by training inside your mission. You say, well, aren't we all door kickers? No. Some of you are combat search and rescue. So use that mission and figure out what the gear is right for you. And you're in a powerful position. You're in a very tenable position. And what I mean by that is, sure, you don't have a government agency that's going to go, whatever you want, we're going to give it to you. No, because no government agency does that. They say, here's what we want you to have. We took a vote in a back room and you didn't get any say so. Well, here's the good news for you. Whatever your budget can handle, that's what you can afford. But don't aimlessly spend money. Go train. That will inform your choices.
Well, you guys pretty much said it all, and I agree with everything you guys say. I will add this, though. As consumers, civilians, we tend to get caught up in commercialization, advertisement, right? The visual stuff. And I think, again, we've already talked about it. We get sucked into it. So we think if we get that gear, we get that kit because that person, that particular person, or that other particular person is wearing it, then I can be just as good. And come on, it doesn't work that way. Again, like you guys have said, $500 firearm, $1,500 worth of training, that's where it really counts. And again, we have to be mindful of, did I buy this because I saw someone with it or it was used here? Can I actually apply this? Will this work in my environment? And again, will I be willing to dive into branches, rocks, dirt, mud, concrete? Am I willing to rub this gear up against a stucco wall, in an urban setting? That's the kind. And if you're afraid to, then again, don't spend the money on that stuff. You guys have said it all, and that's what I wanted to back it up with. Awesome, great info.
All right, so I don't think there's much of a disagreement between anybody in here. My advice to everybody, just piggybacking off what like Bruce and Chris were talking about, is, getting started out, go the surplus route first. You always hear that saying, buy once, cry once, but how do you know what you need or what works for you? You don't. Go out there and go the surplus route first, because like I said, the U.S., particularly with the U.S. military stuff, it's good gear, guys. Again, cold weather combat boot, $20 on eBay is what I bought. They were used, but they were brand spanking new when I got them, and they only cost $20 freaking. Amazing. I've used U.S. military issue combat boots my whole life, and people always ask me like, "Hey, what kind of boots you wear?" And there's all kinds of high speed, hundreds of dollar boots out there that are, civilian manufacturers made by somebody, and they just cost an arm and a leg. Man, I wear the issued stuff. Never had a complaint. I'm not the one that sits there and say, oh, their issued stuff sucks. I fucking went to war 3 times with issued boots and they got me there and back. And so did everybody else that was with me, for God's sakes. Mainly because we weren't allowed to wear anything else, but the issued stuff works just fine. Go to surplus stores, check them out, get the bargain freaking gear so that you can spend that money towards training. I just went recently to a training course for MVGs, and I learned more in the 5 days I was there and in terms of MVGs than probably the vast majority of my time in the military, with MVGs. There's some really quality training out there, guys. So again, go the surplus route first. And then once you see what works for you, maybe then you can start dabbling into the civilian stuff. There's a lot of good quality civilian made gear out there. But how do you know what you want? You don't know what right looks like yet. So I would, especially anybody jumping in, again, go the surplus route first. And then after that, maybe, looking at some of the more higher price stuff. So with that, let's segue into sex robots. And this is topic number 2. And I don't know exactly where this is going to go, but I am of the opinion that the sooner we get these things, the better. And, I think they'll solve a lot of problems in the world. However, I think they will create their own problems as well. You got these guys that are, introverts, spend most of their time on computers rather than socializing with people. We're sucked into these cell phones and texting people, and we're not talking to each other anymore. So, if we get sex robots, it's just going to take those introverts and make them even more closed doors. Because why do they need to go socialize anymore? They can get all their needs attended to. So maybe this is not the greatest thing. However, I will say that a squad or fire team issued robot is a good thing for Marines and soldiers on deployment. As long as they're properly maintained and the PMCS is done on them, so they're not just, getting used and abused and passed on to the next guy. They're properly taken care of. Might not be a bad idea. I do remember, if I'm not mistaken, the Japanese on submarines did have sex dolls for their sailors. So that was a thing. So who's next?
Yeah, that's not really a new idea. It's been around for a long time, but I think it's just some of the military's best kept secrets. So I'm gonna tell you guys, when I first heard about the idea of sex robots, I'm like, this is crazy. It really is. But when you start looking at it from a logistical perspective, I mean, I got a real woman, and the upkeep is freaking ridiculous, man. It's just a money pit constantly. I need shoes. I need sex robots don't need any of that. It's a one-time purchase. And I'm certain that the manufacturers will offer good warranties. I recommend going out and getting a good lifetime warranty on service and upkeep. And, as long as you do, I think of it sort of like a good weapon, as long as keep it lubed, good maintenance, take good care of it. When it's wet, dry it off before you put it up. It should give you, years of service, I think. And so I'm starting to become a little bit more along the lines of being a little more open-minded to it. And I'm telling you that, I just got married and I'm completely happy in my marriage, but I'm still sort of a newlywed. This is our first Christmas together being married. If things don't work out, I would seriously consider going the sex robot direction next time. I just, at my age, I just think it's maybe a good choice. You guys are laughing. Oh, one of the other things I want to do is this is where our chat can really help us. I see it's starting to blow up. So those of you, give us some feedback. Let us know your thoughts. I'm sure one day, 100 years from now, someone will stumble across this feed and read the chat and wonder where everything went wrong.
All right. I got to put this out there right away. Since one follows the other, let me state unequivocally, I do not recommend military surplus sex robot. I want to go on the record saying I told you so. All right.
You beat me to it, Doc.
Well, what if it's new old stock?
Well, I don't care how well it was maintained. First off, she's going to have an attitude. Oh, my God. Also, shelf life. That's gotta be some serious mileage. I don't ever want to see sex robots in the squad. While on the face of it, it seems to be a logical conclusion. I just know that in the Army, we weren't allowed to touch a weed eater without proper licensing and certification. Could you imagine the the training that would be involved license on the sex robot? No.
Oh my God, I could just see the classes in boot camp now.
You would be at AIT and they would just have 140 of you lined up on these 3 lanes. And so my story, I will tell this story. Okay. So I'm an Army brat and I come from a long, long line of warriors. They go back to when we came here as immigrants on both my mother's and father's side of the family. And so, so I knew I was going to the military. So I went to the military and went, well, I might as well go infantry because why? Why not? I'm a knuckle dragger. And so they allowed me into the infantry. I'm pretty sure they wanted to throw me in as a cook. But so they allowed me in the infantry. My wet dream was to shoot an M60 machine gun. And so the day in AIT where we got to FAM fire, we weren't even qualifying yet. They gave us a 100-round belt. And we're out there in the hot Georgia heat because this is a school of the infantry. And people are going up to this huge berm, and there's like 12 stations with M60s. And, they kept switching the barrels and stuff like this. And so I walk up with, actually, I think it was a 50-round belt. I walk up with a half belt, 50 rounds, up the berm because they're screaming and yelling at you. All right, lay down. You lay down, and then you put it in the feed tray and you slap it down and all this stuff. And they're just screaming at you the whole damn time. And then it's miserable. I'm hot. It's humid. It's just, it's like balls hot in Georgia. And I'm like, God dang, eaten by mosquitoes and ticks and red clay. And I'm like, you know what? I just had enough. I don't know what day this is in my 90 days of hell, but it's enough. I squeeze that trigger and I just hold it down. I just want to get off this damn berm where people are kicking me in the legs and screaming and yelling at me and stuff. And I put all 50 rounds right down in a single squeeze. Now, that's the wrong thing. It's abusive to the gun. You shouldn't do that. I'm not joking. The guy beating on me stops beating on me. He bends his head down through all the other shooting and he says, hey. And suddenly I'm a human and he's talking to me like I'm a human. He says, hey, when that happens next time, that's a cook-off. It means the barrel's gotten too hot. And he's popping out that barrel while we're talking. He's like, it means the barrel's gotten too hot and you just need to break the belt and your runaway gun will stop and you can reshoot. And so just for a fleeting moment, he was like a human to me. So I stand up. He's like, yeah, go on back because my 50 rounds are gone. I just squeezed it out. And I'm walking down this berm. I mean, this is like a 12-foot berm. And I'm walking down this grass berm. And I'm almost in tears. A grown man. I'm like 18 years old. I'm almost in tears because something I've dreamt about for years. Hey, San Diego, you've got my sex robot story. Anyway,
just in time.
And I'm almost in tears. And I had this moment, like that epiphany that hits you right in the forehead. I was like, I've waited for years for this, and it was miserable. It was a horrible, horrible experience shooting the M60 machine gun. And I walked down that berm, and I stopped, and I thought to myself, if the Army ever teaches sex education, I'm done with sex. And so now we go up to sex robots for the squad. And I'm just saying, I don't need sex if the Army is going to teach it. I'm just going to tell you that straight up. I'm just going to go ahead and become celibate. And I'm going to be a Catholic monk. And, I'll be like Monty Python. I'll sing songs and hit myself in the forehead with a big book. All right. So that's my thing on military sex robots. Yes, they will probably happen just like weed eaters, and don't buy them.
My question
Didn't
is,
you talk about sex robots once before?
He always talks about sex robots.
Not in depth.
Oh, I know what to get them for Christmas then.
I think we all know where this topic came from too, by the way. Hey, my question is, where would they be kept? Would they be kept in the armory? Would an armory custodian get issue them out? And if so, who keeps the weapons card for that robot? The squad
Oh
leader
no,
has-
this would be totally an S1 thing.
Is this like a white glove inspection when you turn it in? It needs to be clean. Well, I mean, who is that guy? What is that MOS? And how do we, in this modern woke culture that we live in, convince young men and or other genders to volunteer for that job?
Yeah.
Okay,
Can't
so
wait
here's
till
the
they hit the surplus market.
so here. I think officially it would have to be kept in the arms room. I think it would have to be signed out by squad, just like all good equipment. But I remember, and I don't know if you guys know this, but back in the 80s, whenever they did a health and welfare inspection up in the ceiling, you not only had drugs, like all your marijuana was up there, but you literally had war trophies. We had Kalashnikovs, full auto Kalashnikovs up there. And so what I'm going to say is, I'm going to say all of the standard issue sex robots will be in the arms room, but all the Russian robots will climb up into the roof and we'll have those for Friday night.
I like that. I like the idea of, I am the what do they call it? The international man. And I was looking at where they were talking about some of the French women in the chat earlier and the benefits and downfalls of having French women. But yeah, I think that they should be a pretty good variation, of different, types of sex robots. Being this diverse military that we claim to have today, I think a diverse selection of sex robots is probably a good idea.
Oh my gosh, you made everything.
All right. So this guy, Zach Tula, he says, what happens when a sex robot comes missing and we all go in the field for 12 weeks while we look for the sex robot? And I admit that's a very real problem and a very real possibility. But at least I would be happy to find a sex robot. I would turn that sex robot in 7.5 minutes late. I'm just saying. And that includes taking my boots off. Anyway.
I'm curious if when like there are the life-size sex dolls right now. Now are they talking about actual moving robots? That I don't know what the now I can kind of see it. I've heard stories where squads and platoons share a fleshlight. I've heard stories about that, and I'm just like, holy crap! And actually, that's how they pass their diseases. They're like a squad like got the same disease because of that. So that I think that would be the issue
Yeah, I'll tell you what,
with this. And again, like Bruce said, is this a new MOS? Who's going to take care of it? Right? It breaks down. Like what? I think it may cause more problems, but I can see the positive things as well. Like if we're talking like replicants from Blade Runner, wow, that was Daryl Hannah's character. She was the prostitute. That can get a little dicey. I mean, shoot, she was killing people. Then we're getting into unexplored territories when it comes to hacking, viruses in the electronic sense. So there's positives and negatives definitely to this. So it's I guess it really comes down to money.
Yeah,
the military is going to think this is the greatest thing ever. Think about it from a command perspective. When our ship pulled into the Philippines, besides showing us all the freaking films about all the horrible diseases we could get, when you walk down the gangplank, they handed you your box of government issued condoms with SK-70 on them. They're going to be like, no, they won't go mess with the locals. They're not going to get in trouble with the locals. Everybody's going to be on base with their sex robot. If you're the CO of a unit, this is the greatest thing ever. The military is going to heavily invest in sex robots because that'll be a way to keep the troops from ever leaving base and getting in trouble out in town.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yep.
Hey Brian, I just want to comment on this comment about what's the TONE on sex robots. So I think it's going to be like how ACOGs got introduced in the Marine Corps. So like in the 03 Iraq invasion, we had like one per squad, right? One designated marksman per squad. And then when I went back in 04, it became like one per fire team. And then, come, maybe 6 or 7 or whatever, it got to the point where like everybody had an ACOG. So I think that's probably going to be the thing. It's going to start off at the squad level, and then we'll work our way to the fire team level. And then maybe if everybody's lucky, you'll have your own issued one that you can keep in your barracks room.
A slow proliferation of sex robots throughout the force structure. I'm liking this. I fully support it. I think that is what. And someone said Sean Young. Oh my God, yeah. So Daryl Hannah, Sean Young, and Cherry 2000. That was what's her name? What's her name? The blonde actress. God dang it. Anyway, my point here is the
Jerry Ryan.
Oh God, that would be fantastic. I mean, she was a Borg. She was Borg, not a sex robot, but we could make it into one. Anyway, I think the TOE realistically is multi-skins so that you can, you have a different girlfriend, whenever it's your evening. Yeah, I think you're going to have to look at multi-skins, and you are correct. That would be another MOS, maintenance, depot level maintenance. Yeah. And you would have to have a -10 so that you know how to maintain her from one user to the next. Yeah.
I like that. It would be the same endoskeleton. So the same NSN or part number on the endoskeleton, that deals with the logistical issues. And then depending on where your troops are deployed, because we all know the grass is always greener on the other side. You talk to Vietnam vets and they have these hooch maids, right? But they're just dying for an American woman, right? They have a surplus of one thing and they want what they can't have. So with the skins, if you're in Vietnam, we'll just say if we were in Vietnam, we're not sending them skins of Asian type sex dolls. You're sending them skins of something else, whether it's African or it can be Latina or it can be white or whatever the case may be. That helps to build morale. I don't want to get too off subject here, but going back to something that Brent said, I know there's been a few times that he and I have been out in the field, and you guys know the conversations that guys have when you've been out in the field for a couple of days, but I know he has a couple of experiences of sharing a fleshlight when he was in the service. And I was wondering if he wanted to maybe share that with us tonight, or if that's something that's just supposed to be between you and I.
Hey, Bruce, what happens on deployment stays on deployment.
I was wondering where he was going with this comment. No, I never, for the record, I never share anything. But when it comes to that category, I will share this story about my Marines though. Working up for Afghanistan, it was 2010, early 2010. My whole platoon was in a squad bay. All the staff and COs stayed in a separate squad bay. But I went to check on my Marines, and I had to use the head. And I walked in the head, and there was no less than 2 Marines at the sinks in the head, washing out their fleshlights. And I had noticed that one of the Marines had a mouth variant, and a mustache had been drawn on it in a Sharpie. And I asked, hey, Devil Dog, what's with the mustache on your mouth, with your mouth light there? And he said that one of the other Marines had gotten a hold of it and added that mustache for him. So that's how that all transpired. But no.
And so for me, that would be an Article 15 offense. I admit company grade only, but you cannot damage. Jesus Christ. You cannot damage the squad sex robot. That's a low blow. I mean, that's really, that's espionage.
You would need a squad level armorer, right? On call 24/7. So at 2 a.m, something broke on the robot. You wake the armorer up and you're like, hey, this isn't working right. Or Jim drew a mustache on her. Can you get me a new skin real quick?
No, I'm telling you, you think about it. You're running off the back end of a Chinook, right? You're running 33 of you running off of there. You got your medic, but you would need a sex robot maintenance personnel, because I swear to God, if those 3 gals are shot up, it would be terrible. I could see them getting hit, going, oh no, oh dear, oh no, and then you need the maintenance guy there to go, oh sweetheart, you look terrible. Let me fix your hair.
Yeah, I see guys here talking about STDs, and I don't think that they're quite tracking or quite following this, because you wouldn't have the STD problem that you have with live
Exactly.
people.
This is why Command would want this. This is why
Yes.
Headquarters Marine Corps would fund this on the level of new Amtraks.
Yes,
I mean, because
yes,
it
you
would
come
eliminate the
in as a-
STD problem. Nobody's getting on the blotter out in town. Hell, Brent would be unemployed as a first sergeant.
yeah.
He'd
What would
have
he
nobody
do?
to get jump shit on.
Let me go on the record as saying, no, I don't think Headquarters Marine Corps would ever fund this. So this is all hypothetical right now.
I'm sorry, Brent. I got to disagree with you there, buddy. The way to keep dance corporals out of trouble. Oh my God, they would be all over this.
What I want to see is if you can figure out a way, like you're going to have to use titanium skeletons and you're going to have some pretty darn good, replaceable skins. But if you can get Cherry, 5000 to run forward and bird dog for the entire platoon, they're like Terminators running, and they can't harm anyone because it's against their program. They can go. He's right here. And then you walk to the bush where the ISIS dude is, and you're like, oh, there he is, and we all start shooting at him. Now, someone threw a grenade, so half her face is missing. We're gonna need that fixed up, and that's when the sex robot medic runs out, fixes her up, and then we're good.
Doc, it sounded like you had a sex robot talking there for a minute.
I heard his voice coming out as a sex robot. Now he has been working on
It did
this.
change.
They're gonna.
I want those
I
of
will be
you-
one of the voices, no doubt about it. Yeah.
I want those of you in chat to look at Santiago's face, and you can go back and replay this at a later date, but he is truly fascinated by this idea. I can see the wheels in his head spinning and the applications that he can use this for, not in military life, but in civilian life. And if he's anything like me, he's got a wife looking on him too with that detestful, somewhat jealous look that they sometimes give us.
Nah. She's right there. She's hearing the whole thing.
See, mine is too, and we're going to be in big trouble when this is over.
Wait, how about you guys put your ladies on and they tell us their opinion on this idea of ours?
Come
I
here,
think
baby.
this will drastically
Come here,
cut
baby.
down on sexual
You can
assault,
tell 'em
right?
that. Come on.
In the military, since that's such a big issue, allegedly, that
Yeah.
uh,
And marriages.
Again, Headquarters Marine Corps is all over this.
go ahead.
I think-
Let's hear it. Let's hear it, Bruce. You got the con,
my-
man.
We need a female perspective. What's your opinion on sex robots in the military?
Men can only dream.
Yeah, we can dream.
There you go.
Yeah, we can dream.
Dream all you want.
All right. I'm going to order a Latino one.
Okay.
What about you, Richard?
The wife's busy in the kitchen, man.
Yay.
That's what
I
I'm
think,
talking about. Yes.
for myself, if this actually happens, if the military does adopt the whole sex robot thing, I'm definitely gonna buy stock in those companies.
Oh, hell yeah.
Wait.
Yep. Oh yeah, definitely.
I mean, when has investing in Vice ever been a bad idea?
Yeah. What's the number one internet search, and it has been forever, is pornography, right? I mean, we're talking about sex industry, sex trade. Like no one talks about it, but that's where people come to put their money in. And I'm going to tell you guys, I'm going to let you in on a little bit of something here. I know you all feel the same way too, but there are things that when I'm at home with a real person that I'm a little embarrassed to ask for or embarrassed to mention or do. But with the sex robot, there's no inhibitions. Like she keeps your secrets, right? So
Yep.
man, it's like a free for all, So those things, maybe you got a person that it's not just someone that's alone or like the soldier, but maybe there's something you wanted to do at home. Your wife, she's back in the States, right? She's holding down the fort there. And you're like, I always wanted to do this thing, but why wait till I get a little R&R? Like I can do it with the sex robot right now. And, just go check it out. And then you're all set. So I think that there's a lot, maybe from the psychological point,
Mhm.
that this could be treatable. I mean, this could really help with some serious issues. You got somebody, he's feeling down. He's had a rough day or whatever. And you're like, hey bro, I've already checked her out. Like she's yours tonight. And he's like, you don't, you don't want to use it. You're like, no, man, this is for you. You know, you're my bro. And then you've done him a solid, you know?
Okay, so let's follow up. I don't mean to make it get too serious or anything like this, but in 1994, yeah, us old guys, in 1994, the internet exploded. And it exploded. It existed before then, guys. Everybody's like, oh, it didn't. Email existed. Email, which is kind of an internet system, existed for the United States military in the late 60s. Dude, in the late 60s. All right. It does not explode on the commercial market until 1994 when they figure out how to put JPEG images into the code. And of course, you say, oh, well, okay, images, I get it, for advertising. A manner of speaking, what really explodes the internet and what dominates the internet to this very day is pornography. Guys, it's pornography. And so you say, oh, neat little tiddlywink, thank you. I'll keep that. That'll be a great icebreaker in a cocktail party. No, guys, it's far more than that. It is far more than that. When you think of cybersecurity and cyber attacks, you naturally think, well, that's national defense. That's CIA, NSA stuff. Or you think, no, it's about banking. It's about online banking. That certainly leads cybersecurity. Wrong. What has led cybersecurity for the last 25 years has been pornography. So when you think about the internet and what we're doing right now and talking on video stream, when you think about cybersecurity and how you can bank and how our government does business, you've got one industry to thank, and it's pornography. The reality is that sex robots will happen. There's no question about it. This isn't even a question. It's going to happen. All the things are in place now. We're just trying to see if we can get the AI perfected, and we're trying to see if we can get power packs whereby a single robot can maneuver itself around. We can already have robots that have better agility than human beings. Are you kidding me? Can't even knock them over. And they're bipeds. They're just up on two legs. Can't even knock them over. But the problem is the power source. So this is going to happen. And the driving force, the money behind it, the driving force is the desire and the money. And that's always been the sex industry for the last 25 years of technology. So this is definitely going to happen. Now reflect back on a Futurama, the TV animation. There's a Futurama episode that kind of minimally captures what the movie AI is about. If you've ever watched the movie Artificial Intelligence, the story goes this way, that it's at the end of it's in a dystopia of types. It's a very, very comfortable future dystopia, but humanity is shrinking, partly because of the environment and partly because we have introduced sex robots. And those sex robots have become very authentic and can respond to humans with mimicking emotion, like skin. They'll warm up at the skin to the touch and all of these things. And they become very, very believable. And what you see is that humanity eventually dies out. And this is the warning in the very funny episode with Futurama is, hey, boys and girls, be careful about the sex robots because we'll all die out. Well, I don't know if that's the case. I would venture to guess that today, and I have several reasons for believing this, 30% of the human population, male and female, are called to produce offspring. They want to marry. They want traditional families. They want to raise children. They feel great pride in that. I'm one of those 30%. I used to believe this was 90, 95%. Historically, 10% of males never married. Historically speaking, that's our best guess. Today, and it's just in the last generation or two, that is a whopping 25%. 25% of the younger generations no longer get married. Up to we're watching first marriages, and we're watching them up to like 44 years of age, and they aren't marrying. A whopping 25%. This is a growing trend when we look at industrial nations throughout Europe and Eastern Asia and North America. This is, and Australia. This is a growing trend. Men are walking away. Men are not entering traditional college, careers, home buying, car buying. They're not getting into families. And that's the driving force behind sex robots. Is there an inherent danger? You bet there is. But it's a reflection of our time. Yep. And I think the other thing to remember is it's very unlikely that we'll ever see this end humanity. If we're going to be honest, there's always going to be that 30% that are called to traditional families. So I can actually see this alleviating many, many issues that we're facing today, at least relaxing those issues, social and legal issues that we're facing today. This could come true. And I've been on my sandbox long enough, and I took a fun topic and I kind of turned it serious. But, you know, I see a lot of people, they're saying, do you guys read the, the chats? Yes, we're reading the chats. Yes, we're laughing at some of the comments. But you're asked, one guy asked, what the hell is this? Is this a serious conversation? Surely we're pointing fun at it, but I'm going to insist, yes, it's a very serious conversation because this isn't fiction. It's going to happen.
Hey guys, so we got maybe a little less than 15 minutes left and before we hit the 2-hour mark. So I think it's a good time to start wrapping up. I just got to say, Santiago, that coffee mug is legit, man. I thought I had a good one with the grenade, man, but dude, that is awesome.
That's like a Castle Grayskull coffee mug. That's amazing.
That's like drinking the soul of your enemy, man. I love that. That's legit.
That's a gift from the wife.
Nice. She did good, man.
I tell you what, sex robots don't give gifts like that, people.
No, that's 100% true. If for you guys don't know this, Santiago's wife last year actually reached out to me. She's like, "Hey, I need to get something for my man. What do you recommend?" And I was like, "Man, that's a good lady right there, boy." So, anyways, back on conversation. Got sidetracked there.
But you said, hey, buy Mark Larson's book, buy the whole suite. There's like a library. That's what you told her, right?
You don't see her.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Jumping for joy back there behind the computer.
So we got a little over 10 minutes. Let's go around the horn and finish up this conversation. Right? I mean, anything really. You can talk about this or what's coming on your channel, whatever. But let's start wrapping up. Les, you're up.
All right. Well, I got to tell you, with all the benefits, Headquarters Marine Corps and Department of Defense as a whole is going to be all behind the sex robot thing. They're going to dump money into that like they have the F-35 or a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. Think about it. You know, keep the troops on base or on ship, keep them happy. They're not out in town. They're not getting on the blotter. They're not getting STDs. They're not getting married to the local stripper. I mean, how does Headquarters Marine Corps or the DOD not win in this equation? They're going to go for this, undoubtedly. And we're going to have this soon. Like, probably 10 years from now, they'll be issued sex robots. Mark my words. As far as what I've got going on my channel, been doing a lot of coverage of some shooting matches lately and just starting to get some videos up of the One Shepherd 40th anniversary. It was completely awesome, and I hope everybody tunes in for the coverage.
Sorry, I'm right on the same page as Les. Someone in the comments had mentioned that with sex robots, you don't end up having children as a consequence, right? And that's a really good point, because what's the military and what's the big corporations and everyone going to today? They're talking about going green, right? This could be the military's next big going green initiative, because if you aren't producing little crumb snatchers, then that's good for the environment. And that helps us end humanity as we know it by not reproducing and not causing kids that are sucking up all the oxygen and producing carbon dioxide. So I think that they might try to use it through the Going Green initiative to sort of further progress it, make it go a little bit faster, get adopted a little quicker. I'm sure this is something Congress could push through. again, going green, and I'm sure Joe Biden would sign off on it. And who knows how quickly we'll have the first prototype robots within the military inventory, on a testing purposes, of course. But you know how things are. They start out, being used by special forces and some of our elite teams. And then the next thing you know, every soldier out there wants the same thing in their unit. So I think this could take off pretty quick, and everything could be good. In terms of what's going on my channel, I'm going to do a quick transition. I actually was inspired by John at UW Gear. He's not here with us tonight. He's behind the sewing machine stitching out chest rigs, but he sort of inspired me to do the ultimate AR build. It's not going to be a huge departure from what he did on his. If you haven't seen those videos of his, check them out. He released a second one today on accuracy testing, but I am in the process of putting one together myself, and hopefully maybe right after the holidays, because I've got some parts for that on my Christmas list. Hopefully right after Christmas, I'll be able to get a first video out on that. So if you're not looking at my channel and that's something you're interested in, have a look at it. It's not a very expensive build, but it is a quality build.
All right, so in a past episode, we actually discussed with a great deal of seriousness, the future of infantry. Will it ever go to, all UAVs or robotics? Will it go to that? Will we see AI introduced into robotics for the infantrymen? And I think as a general rule of thumb, we all kind of concluded that's unlikely anywhere in the near or even distant future, maybe in the very, very distant future. But ultimately, we agreed the infantry role isn't going away, and a human in the loop is critical. Now, if you consider that, then you say, okay, but we are trying to get the weight off of humans, off of infantrymen, and onto robots. I think robots have a lot of different roles in society and certainly with the military. And, we can make all the jokes we want about sex robots. I think the reality is that it also has a role, that it has a role in society, and that they potentially have a significant role even in the military. Certainly something to think about, and it's a lot of fun. It's always tongue in cheek. But there's also some serious thought behind it. I mean, Blade Runner isn't wrong that they made replicants, not truly robots, but they made replicants, and they realized, wait, you need sex replicants as well, because we've given these people this drive. And I don't think we can eliminate that drive from humanity. All right. I will also transition and say that I am wrapping up my first year on YouTube. Having a lot of fun doing this. I'm living my professor dream because I always wanted to teach small unit tactics as a professor, but everybody scratches their head and says that's not a legitimate discipline. I'm like, quite frankly, it is. So I'm living out the dream. I will continue into next year, and I'm speaking with the publisher who has been delayed 1 full year on the release of the insurgent and guerrilla warfighting, otherwise known as the OPFOR 2 book, which now he tells me will be called OPFOR 4. But it's the tactical look at insurgents, guerrillas, terrorists, and crime cartels. This book will come out in 2022, thank God. It has been a very, very long build, but unfortunately it won't come out until the end of 2022. So in the meantime, I will continue talking Blue 4 tactics, and as the months progress, look for me to switch over when that book becomes available, and let's spend some time talking about how the enemy fights. Okay, thanks.
Come on. All right. Agree with everything you guys have to say. Let me start from the last subject, moving back. For the whole sex robots, I can definitely see some application. There's a lot of depression in the military. We know that, and we've seen it. And I think that type of AI could definitely help in that department, absolutely. and I can see it being deployed in that sense. As for robots being used, as Doc was saying, to carry heavier gear and equipment for the foot soldiers so they can move quicker, absolutely. You just go ahead, look at Boston Dynamics right there, because they're working with DARPA. So there it is. It's more than obvious, and eventually they'll weaponize it and all that kind of stuff. But it's getting there. It's getting there. 10, 15 years, I don't know. Maybe somewhere further down the line, we'll probably be, much, much older when that happens. For the whole gear thing, again, if you're starting up, get the surplus gear. It's proven. If they're selling it at stores, that means it's survived. There it is. Right? They're selling it. It's tough. Okay. So definitely work with that. And then, of course, when you have the money, the experience, again, with you get into the modern stuff. And as you gentlemen have said, that's when you start to customize your kit. That's it.
Well, fellas, I mean, it was interesting listening to the sex robot idea. Of course, in the beginning, it sounds, comical, but I guess you guys are making some points on it. But all I got is really more on the gear stuff. Start out surplus. I mean, you're eventually gonna get the Gucci shit anyway. We all do. Everybody's got, both ends of the spectrum in their closet. So I mean, but surplus for the price and for, I mean, how long it lasts. I mean, it can't be ruled out. So that's all I got, man. Thanks for having me. I'll see you guys at the next one.
God, there's so much to say. So going back to the gear, if you got in here late and you're like, I thought this was about gear, and you guys are talking about sex robots. So we had two topics tonight. First one was about surplus versus new made stuff, and just piggyback on what Santiago just said. Yes, absolutely, 100%. If you're just getting into training and everything else, I would personally go the surplus route. I use surplus stuff. I use a combination, but primarily most stuff I use is military surplus gear. It's excellent quality stuff, and absolutely you can get it for the most part cheaper than you can its civilian made equivalent. But at some point you're gonna want to spend more on stuff, and when you have that more disposable income and whatnot, you can afford those those higher priced gear items if you're leaning that direction. Segueing into sex robots, I don't see that happening anytime soon. I don't know if the country as a whole, the civilian populace, are accepting of that. However, I will tell you, I 100% think that Marines and soldiers in the infantry, no less, would absolutely 100% be on board with that. So there's no question in my mind about that. As funny as this topic is, I absolutely could see those squad and fire team robots being utilized and properly maintained, to be quite frank. So that's all I'm going to say about that. But I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. As far as what I got coming in the future, guys, I am swamped right now. I got so much crap I got to do. But just everything that's coming down the pipe. Christmas is right around the corner, so I know people are hitting me up. They're like, "Brent, where's the Christmas video?" I released the Christmas video on Christmas. One year I did it like a couple days before Christmas, and people were like, "Oh, it's too soon." Blah, 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 blah. So from now on, I released that on Christmas morning. So if you're waiting for my Christmas video, it will be released Christmas morning and no sooner. I have some Primary Arms optics stuff that I've filmed. I just haven't sat down and edited it. So I've got that couple of that stuff coming down the pipe. I got the 40th One Shepherd anniversary video I still got to sit down and do. I'm trying to time that with come January. What's the date on that, Doc, for the open registration? Let's see. He's giving me the 8th, January 8th. Okay, January 8th. Registration opens for One Shepherd. So I want to try to time the release of my 40th anniversary video with that registration, so that excitement is generated off that video and it drives guys to go register for those upcoming courses in the new year. So I got that. I got preparation for Winter Forge. I kind of want to do a video where I lay out all the gear I'm taking, kind of like what I've done for One Shepherd in the past. I want to lay out all the stuff I want to take to Winter Forge and film that so that you guys have an idea of what I'm taking up there. So if you're new to Winter Forge, you have an idea to get that stuff. I've got to film that sooner than later before I go up there. So obviously guys have an opportunity to buy that stuff if they need it. So that's something that's on my radar. Another video that's on my radar is I want to put together an M14 E2 replica. Essentially, I've got a stock, I've got all these parts, and all I've got to do is I've got to stain, I've got to do all this stuff and build me an M14 E2, which is the automatic rifleman variant of the M14. I want to put that together. So I was kind of wanting to do a video about that. So that's another thing that's coming down the pipe. So as you guys can see, I've got a whole bunch of crap that I want to put together. So nonetheless, guys, we are at the 2-hour mark. I think this was a very interesting conversation tonight. Does anybody have any save rounds before we end this? No save rounds. All right. Well, I appreciate everybody coming on. This is Richard's first time coming on the stream. Oh, here we go. I got a save round. Next Monday, guys, next week, we're going to have a live stream about a possibility of a second American Civil War. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in some new people, all right? We have a tendency of kind of all being in agreement. I'm deliberately bringing on a guy that I know I don't see eye to eye on a lot of things. So this is a guy that I used to work with. He was a coworker, and we used to debate back and forth on a bunch of stuff. I'm going to deliberately bring that guy in because I want a different perspective on stuff. So next Monday live stream will be about a possibility of a second American Civil War, and I will have a diverse conglomeration. And Richard, you were absolutely 100% invited to that. Doc, you got something?
Yeah, I do. So one of the comments, we don't often respond to them because they come in so fast and furious. But Destiny said, are you guys sick? What's wrong with you? And I would say to that, no, Destiny, this is Warriors talking about Warrior stuff. And so, and I get it. I'm not obtuse here. I don't mean to be obtuse. If you're not a warrior and you're not into warriorhood, and yes, there are female warriors. There most certainly are very capable female warriors. And so if you're not into that, warriorhood does tend to be male dominated. And I get it that we have a very cold and sometimes even twisted sense of humor. But we're talking to each other about warrior stuff. And these are values. If you listen carefully and parse through all the chaff, you get to the wheat, right? And we're talking about values here. And so if this seems offensive to you, that's not our intent. But then again, we're not going to make this a knitting bee or a woke meeting because that's not what warriors value. So that's my answer to you. Didn't mean to offend you. But if we seem a little sick, I don't know, maybe we are.
Yeah. And if you don't like it, go pound sand. Nobody gives a shit.
Speaking of Destiny, I think I just found the next name for my sex robot.
Hey. All right, guys. Have a good night.